The heavy rain fell relentlessly that evening, a storm that had torn through the streets with such fury, one could almost hear the sky weeping. In the small, dimly lit neighborhood, Maria, an elderly woman in her mid-70s, walked slowly down the alleyway toward her humble home. Her frail figure was hunched under the weight of a lifetime of hardship, and her once beautiful silver hair, now messy and unkempt, fluttered in the wind. Maria's heart was burdened, not just by age, but by years of emotional pain. Her marriage to Roberto had been strained for a long time. He had been unfaithful, slipping away into the arms of other women, never once considering the toll it had taken on her. The pain of betrayal was something she had endured in silence, swallowing her tears with grace. But that night, she felt it all weighing heavier than ever before. As she reached the corner of the street, something caught her eye. Beneath the lamppost, shivering in the pouring rain, was a tiny white dog. His fur, dirty and matted with the cold rain, was a stark contrast against the black patches that adorned his body. He was a French bulldog, small but full of life, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. Maria's heart broke in that moment. She didn't think twice. With trembling hands, she picked the dog up, cradling him to her chest, offering warmth in the only way she knew how, through compassion. The small dog nuzzled her gently, as though he understood that this was the only place left for him. The storm raged on, but in that brief moment everything seemed still. As Maria brought the dog inside, the door creaked open to reveal Roberto sitting on the couch, his back turned toward her. The moment he heard the door, he sighed, as if already anticipating her arrival. His eyes met the dog she held in her arms, and without missing a beat, he sneered. "What is this?" he asked, his voice laced with contempt. Maria, unbothered by his tone, responded softly, "I couldn't leave him out there. He needs help." Roberto's eyes narrowed, his patience already wearing thin. He'd been planning his departure for weeks now, and this act of kindness, as trivial as it seemed, gave him the perfect excuse to end their marriage. He had never cared for Maria the way she had cared for him, and in his mind, her adopting a stray dog was the final straw. "That's it. I can't take this anymore," he said, standing up abruptly. This impulsive behavior, it's too much. I'm leaving, Maria." The words hit her like a slap across the face. The finality in his voice, the coldness in his eyes. He didn't even bother to gather his things, he just walked out the door. The storm outside seemed to match the storm inside her chest. She stood there, rooted to the spot, staring at the empty doorway. In a split second, everything she had known and believed in had come crashing down. Her heart was shattered, and her hands trembled as she lowered the little dog to the ground. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she silently wept, the weight of betrayal and abandonment sinking deeper with each passing minute. The days that followed were long, each one stretching into an eternity of loneliness. Maria stayed in her small, quiet house, the weight of her emotions consuming her. Without Roberto, her world seemed barren. The dog, whom she had named Chico, stayed by her side, curled up at her feet while she spent countless hours in sorrow. He didn't ask for anything, didn't demand affection, but the gentle warmth of his body against hers was enough to make her feel less alone. Chico became her only companion, the only source of solace in a world that felt suddenly empty. As she sat in her old chair, staring at the walls that had once been filled with love, she realized that she had nothing left but him. But was that enough? Could the companionship of a stray dog fill the gaping hole left by the man she had loved for so long? Chico looked up at her, his eyes filled with unspoken understanding. Maria, for the first time in a long time, smiled faintly. Maybe she hadn't lost everything after all. The days turned into weeks, and Maria's grief seemed to deepen with each passing moment. She cried quietly at night, her tears staining the pillow as she curled up in her bed. The empty space beside her, once occupied by Roberto, now felt like an unbearable void. The house, which had once been filled with laughter and conversation, now echoed only with silence. Chico, however, never left her side. The little dog would climb into her lap, nuzzling her face with his cold nose, and somehow, in those small gestures, he began to heal a fraction of her broken heart. Maria's tears didn't stop, but the presence of the dog brought some comfort. He didn't need her to speak, nor did he ask for anything more than love and care. His companionship was a silent promise that, even in the darkest moments, she wasn't entirely alone. Every morning, she woke to his gentle nudges, as if to remind her that life was still worth living. She would rise from her bed slowly, still feeling the weight of her sorrow, but as she moved through her routine, Chico's soft steps behind her began to provide a rhythm to her days. As the weeks passed, Maria started to notice something she hadn't seen before. Her bond with Chico was growing stronger, more profound. She would talk to him as though he were a person, sharing her thoughts, her regrets, and her memories. Sometimes she would find herself laughing softly at her own stories, knowing that he was there, listening, offering his unwavering loyalty. One afternoon, as the sunlight filtered through the window, casting long shadows on the floor, Maria sat by the fireplace, stroking Chico's fur. He rested his head in her lap, his eyes closed in contentment, and for the first time since Roberto left, Maria felt a sense of peace wash over her. The love she had once given to her husband was now directed at this small, helpless creature. In the quiet of the house, Maria found herself thinking about the future. What did it hold for someone like her? A woman abandoned by her husband, with nothing but an old house and a dog to call her own. Would she ever find happiness again? These questions hung in the air, unanswered. But one thing became clear. Chico was her purpose now, her reason to wake up each day. As she petted him gently, she realized that the love she had to offer wasn't gone. It had just shifted to a new, unexpected place. One of Maria's few outings was her daily walk with Chico. She would take him to the small park near her home, a place she had visited for years, where she used to walk hand in hand with Roberto. The memories of their happy moments together haunted her during these walks, but she forced herself to keep going for Chico's sake. As she walked through the park, other people watched her with curiosity, many with expressions of pity. A lonely old woman, walking a dog, how typical, they must have thought. Maria didn't mind their glances, though. The dog beside her was the only companion she needed. With every step they took, her heart healed a little more. Sometimes, a young mother with a stroller would smile at her and ask how Chico was doing, but Maria's answers were always short and distracted. She had no energy left for small talk. She was only focused on the comforting presence of her little dog by her side, and that was enough. She didn't need anyone else. Yet, little did Maria know, her life was about to change again, in ways she couldn't have possibly imagined. Maria's healing journey with Chico had just begun, but there was still a long way to go. With each passing day, she felt the weight of her sorrow lift. But new challenges were on the horizon, and they would come from unexpected places. As the storm had passed, new beginnings were waiting to emerge. But what would they bring? Would it be happiness, or even more pain? Her simple life, once shattered by betrayal, was about to face an even bigger test. It was another dreary afternoon, the rain still clinging to the streets, leaving a reflective sheen across the city. Maria and Chico were walking down the same familiar park path, a route she had grown accustomed to, although each step now felt different without Roberto by her side. As they moved through the quiet park, Maria's eyes were cast down, lost in thought, when a sleek black limousine pulled up to the curb. She barely noticed at first, too wrapped in her grief and the comfort of Chico's presence. But from the back seat of the car, a pair of sharp eyes were watching her. The man inside the limousine, Lucas, a young man in his early 30s, was immediately struck by the scene before him. The elderly woman, walking slowly but steadily with her small dog, seemed like an image out of time, a picture of quiet strength in the midst of an indifferent world. There was something about her, a kindness in her demeanor, a sadness that seemed to cling to her. But most of all, her bond with the dog was something real and pure. He had always been accustomed to luxury, always surrounded by material wealth, but there was something about this small moment, the simplicity of the woman's walk with her dog, that pulled at his heartstrings. Without fully realizing it, Lucas found himself staring at her, his gaze softening. He couldn't explain why, but there was something deeply human in the way she moved, something he didn't often see in the sterile confines of his own life. Lucas was the only child of Alejandro, a billionaire real estate mogul who owned vast swaths of land, including the expensive condominium complex where he resided. Lucas, having lived a life of privilege, had always been surrounded by wealth and luxury, but despite his material advantages, he felt detached from the world. He couldn't recall the last time he had truly connected with someone, not just on a surface level, but deeply, emotionally. The woman with the dog, Maria, had sparked something in him, a curiosity that he couldn't ignore. His father had taught him that success in life was about making deals, gaining power, and protecting the family fortune. But this encounter made him question everything he had been taught. He couldn't stop thinking about Maria's quiet strength, her sorrow that mirrored something he had long buried in himself. After watching her for a few moments, he realized that he couldn't just leave it at that. There was something about her, something special that he felt compelled to learn more about. Without fully understanding why, he instructed his driver to follow her discreetly. This wasn't like him. He had never pursued random encounters like this, but something about Maria seemed so different. As days passed, Lucas found himself returning to the park again and again, hoping to see Maria and Chico. He had never spoken to her, never made his presence known, but each time they crossed paths, there was an undeniable connection. Lucas didn't know what to make of it, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Maria's story than met the eye. One afternoon, as Lucas parked his car near the park, he saw her again. Maria was sitting on a bench, Chico curled up at her feet, gazing out at the lake. For the first time, Lucas took a step forward. His heart raced as he approached her, uncertain of what to say. "Excuse me," Lucas said, his voice soft, but carrying an unusual sense of warmth. Maria looked up, startled, as if she hadn't expected anyone to approach her. She straightened up slowly, her hand still on Chico's head, as if the dog's presence was her anchor in a world that had drifted away from her. "Yes," she asked quietly, her voice cautious but not unkind. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," Lucas said, his eyes lingering on Chico for a moment. "I see you here often, and I wanted to say that it's nice to see someone so at peace." Maria raised an eyebrow, unsure of how to respond. She had long been wary of the world around her, especially men like him, young, rich, and seemingly without care. "I suppose," she answered hesitantly, "it's the dog that makes the difference." Lucas smiled, charmed by her directness. "Maybe," he said, "but there's something about you, about the way you walk with him. It seems like there's a story behind it. If you don't mind me asking, what brings you here every day?" Maria didn't know why, but something in his gaze felt different. It wasn't pity. It wasn't curiosity masked as sympathy. It was something more genuine, as if he truly wanted to understand. She hesitated before answering, her voice softening. "Life has a way of bringing you to places you didn't expect, places you didn't plan on. But sometimes all you need is a little company," she said, glancing down at Chico, who wagged his tail in response. Lucas didn't press her further, but he knew this was just the beginning. He couldn't quite explain it, but he was drawn to Maria in a way he had never been drawn to anyone before. There was something deeper about her, something he hadn't realized he needed to see in his life. The unexpected encounter with Maria had begun to awaken something in Lucas that he had long forgotten, the desire to connect, to understand. He realized that there was more to life than just wealth, power, and status, and with every passing day, his fascination with the woman he had seen so often in the park grew, leading him toward an unexpected path. Maria, on the other hand, had no idea that this chance meeting would soon turn her life upside down. She had lived in the shadows for so long, just her and her dog, and now a stranger, albeit a wealthy one, had entered her world. Would this encounter bring her the solace she needed, or would it lead to a new set of challenges she hadn't yet imagined? Weeks had passed since Lucas's chance encounter with Maria, and his thoughts about her only deepened. Something about her quiet strength and the unspoken bond between her and her dog, Chico, left him feeling unsettled in the best possible way. The more he observed her, the more questions arose in his mind. Who was she really? What had brought her to this park, walking alone with her dog? Then, one day, as Lucas was having a casual conversation with his father, Alejandro, the topic of Maria unexpectedly surfaced. Alejandro, ever the astute businessman, was aware of everything happening around him, especially when it came to his vast empire. His gaze landed on Lucas, sensing his son's distraction. "What's been occupying your thoughts lately?" Alejandro asked, setting down his glass of whiskey and looking at his son with a knowing expression. Lucas paused before speaking. There's something about a woman I've seen walking her dog near the park. Her name's Maria. I don't know why, but I can't stop thinking about her. Alejandro raised an eyebrow. A woman from the park? Lucas nodded. Yes, and her dog. There's something about him too. I've been looking into it. The dog. It's unusual. The moment the words left Lucas's lips, Alejandro's expression shifted. He sat up straighter, his curiosity piqued. What do you mean unusual? What kind of dog is it? Lucas frowned, wondering what his father was so interested in. Okay, it's a French bulldog, white with black patches. Doesn't seem special at first glance, but there's something about him, something that feels significant. I can't explain it. Alejandro's eyes narrowed. He knew exactly what Lucas was referring to. Over the years, there had been rumors of a missing dog, one tied to his own family's legacy, a dog that had been lost under mysterious circumstances. I need to know more about that dog, Alejandro said, his voice turning steely. Find out everything you can about it, and about Maria, too. Lucas stared at his father, a new wave of uncertainty creeping in. What are you saying? What's so special about this dog? Alejandro sighed and leaned back in his chair, his eyes now distant, as if revisiting a past he had long buried. That dog was once part of our family, my late wife's favorite. The story of how he was lost is not just a simple one. There's a connection, Lucas, and it's a connection that might be more important than you realize. Determined to uncover the truth, Lucas discreetly began his investigation. He had his team of private investigators dig into Maria's past and the history of Chico, the dog. What he discovered was a shocking revelation that left him stunned. Chico, the seemingly ordinary dog, had once belonged to his mother, the late wife of Alejandro. Years ago, after a tragic accident, the dog had been lost, presumed dead, and the family had never been able to trace him. But now, it seemed, Chico had somehow found his way back into the world, unbeknownst to them. Lucas couldn't believe what he was reading. The dog's lineage was tied to a vast fortune, money and assets that had been left in a trust fund, intended for whoever would care for the animal. Chico wasn't just any dog. He was the key to unlocking millions of dollars in wealth, inherited from a legacy that no one had known about for years. As Lucas pondered this newfound information, he realized that his initial encounter with Maria was not a random coincidence. The universe, it seemed, had led him to her and to Chico for a reason. Lucas immediately reached out to Maria, knowing that her life would never be the same once she learned the truth about Chico. He couldn't help but wonder, would she accept the offer, or would she feel overwhelmed by the responsibility? Was she ready to face the reality of her new life, one that could offer her riches beyond her wildest dreams? The next day, Lucas arranged for a meeting with Maria, arranging a quiet, discreet rendezvous at a local cafe. As he sat at the table, waiting for her arrival, he reflected on everything that had led him to this point. The encounter with the woman who had caught his eye in the park, the unexpected bond between her and Chico, the discoveries that had come to light, all of it had brought him to this moment. Maria entered the cafe slowly, her expression reserved, yet curious. When her eyes met his, there was an uncertainty there, as if she were wondering why she had been called here. Maria, Lucas greeted her with a gentle smile, standing to offer her a seat. I'm glad you could meet me. She nodded, sitting down, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. I don't know why I'm here, but you've been following me, haven't you? Lucas felt a pang of guilt. Yes, I've been looking into things. I owe you an apology for not explaining myself sooner, but there's something important I need to tell you. Maria's eyes widened with suspicion, but she stayed quiet, waiting for him to continue. The dog you've been caring for, Chico, he's not just any dog. He has a legacy, a connection to my family, and he's part of a fortune, one that you've unknowingly inherited by taking him in. Maria's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't understand what he was saying. She didn't know how to process it. Lucas continued, his voice calm but urgent. The money, the inheritance, it all belongs to you now, Maria. Everything you need to know will be in the documents I have for you. Maria sat back in her chair, stunned. The world seemed to blur around her. What did this mean? How could something as simple as adopting a dog lead to a life-altering discovery? Lucas's revelation about Chico's past was like a bombshell dropped into Maria's quiet world. The weight of the inheritance and the ties it had to a legacy she never imagined began to settle in her mind. What would she do with such a fortune? Was it possible that this was her second chance, a chance to rewrite her life story? But as the truth settled in, so did the uncertainty. Would Maria accept the inheritance? And if so, what would it mean for her future with Chico? The next chapter of her life had just begun, and it was full of more questions than answers. The days that followed Lucas' revelation felt like a whirlwind to Maria. Her mind, already burdened by the heartbreak of her marriage, couldn't quite comprehend the sudden shift in her life. The quiet life she had carved out with Chico, the dog she had rescued from the storm, was about to be transformed beyond recognition. A few days after their meeting, Maria returned home to find an elegant envelope waiting for her on the doorstep. It was sealed with wax, the kind of wax she had seen only in movies or in the hands of the wealthy. Her name, written in neat, sophisticated script, sent a chill down her spine. She hesitated for a moment before opening it, the weight of the unknown pressing heavily on her shoulders. Inside, the letter was succinct but to the point, informing her that she had been officially invited to meet Lucas at his family's estate, where the details of her inheritance would be explained. There was no mention of the amount, no clue as to what awaited her, but the words legacy and fortune were written in bold, and that alone was enough to make Maria's heart race with confusion. That evening, as Maria sat by the fireplace with Chico curled up beside her, the letter weighed heavily in her lap. It felt like a cruel joke. How could she, a woman who had been discarded and left behind by her own husband, be the beneficiary of such an inheritance? It didn't make sense. She had lived her life humbly, without expectation of wealth. The world she had known had always been one of struggle, not opulence. As Maria contemplated the invitation, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. She had spent years in a relationship that had drained her, both emotionally and physically. Her marriage to Roberto had been a lie, and now this man, Lucas, was offering her something she could never have imagined. It felt too good to be true, but the thought of her future, the possibility of security and comfort for the first time in her life, tugged at her heart. Could she really say no to this? Could she refuse what was essentially a second chance, a life she had never dared to dream of? But the first meeting. The following day, Lucas arranged a meeting at a private, upscale cafe, away from prying eyes. He had made it clear that he wanted to speak to Maria in person, to explain everything and answer any questions she had. As Maria sat at the table waiting for him, she couldn't shake the sense that her life was about to change forever. When Lucas walked in, his presence seemed to fill the space. His tailored suit, his confident stride, the way he held himself, it was all so different from what Maria was used to. He was, after all, a man of wealth and privilege, and she was just a woman who had spent her days in quiet solitude, caring for a dog she found in the rain. "Maria?" Lucas greeted her warmly, sitting down across from her. "I'm so glad you came. I know this must be overwhelming, but I promise you, I only want to help." Maria nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what to say. This inheritance, it's too much. I don't even know what to do with it." Lucas leaned in slightly, his expression serious. "You don't have to decide anything right now, but I want you to understand that this inheritance is yours by right. It belongs to you, and I think it could be the start of something new for you." Maria looked down at her hands, her fingers trembling slightly. "But why me?" she asked quietly. "Why did it come to me?" Lucas paused, his gaze softening. "It's because of Chico. He's been part of my family's history for years, and somehow, fate led him to you. My father and I, we believe you're the right person to carry on this legacy." As Maria absorbed Lucas's words, a wave of confusion mixed with a strange sense of responsibility washed over her. She had never asked for this. She had never sought wealth, never imagined that her life would one day be tied to a fortune. "But what do you want in return?" Maria asked, her voice trembling slightly. Lucas hesitated for a moment before answering. "I'm not asking for anything from you, Maria, but my father, he believes that this money should be used for something greater. He wants you to consider using it for a charitable cause, something that will honor Chico's legacy and help those who need it most." Maria's heart sank as the weight of his words settled in. She had no experience with charity, no idea how to use this wealth for anything other than her own comfort. She had spent most of her life just getting by. Could she really turn this unexpected inheritance into something meaningful? "I never wanted this," Maria said, her voice breaking slightly. "I just wanted to help a dog in need. I never expected all of this." Lucas reached across the table, placing his hand gently over hers. "I understand, and I don't expect you to change overnight. But I think you'll find that the path ahead, whatever you choose, will be a way for you to heal and maybe even help others heal along the way." Maria sat in silence, feeling a strange pull between the life she had known and the life that was now being offered to her. The choice was hers, but it didn't feel like a choice at all. It felt like destiny. Maria's world had shifted from one of quiet sorrow to one of unimaginable possibility. The inheritance and the dog, Lucas, they had all led her to this moment. But with it came a sense of responsibility that Maria wasn't sure she was ready to shoulder. The road ahead was uncertain, and Maria had no idea what would come next. Would she be able to navigate this new life, or would the weight of it all become too much for her to bear? As she looked at Lucas, who seemed determined to help her every step of the way, Maria felt a flicker of hope, a hope that maybe, just maybe, her life was finally about to take a turn for the better. Maria spent the next several days in a whirlwind of emotions. The idea of inheriting a fortune, of living a life so different from the one she had known, felt both exhilarating and terrifying. She had never imagined herself as someone who could handle such wealth. Her life had always been modest, quiet, simple, and without the trappings of luxury. Sitting in her small living room, Maria stared at the documents Lucas had left with her. The inheritance, the trust fund, the properties, it all seemed like something out of a dream. But something in her heart told her she wasn't ready for it. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the changes that would come, the responsibility, the expectations. "I never asked for any of this," she muttered, her eyes welling with tears. "I didn't want riches. I just wanted peace." Chico lay beside her, his head resting on her lap, as though sensing her turmoil. Maria stroked his soft fur, taking comfort in the presence of the little dog who had changed her life in ways she never imagined. Her hand trembled as she placed the documents down. She couldn't take them. Not yet. She wasn't ready for this. As Maria struggled with her decision, the weight of her grief for Roberto still lingered. His abandonment had shaken her to the core, and now, faced with a choice that could redefine her life, she felt lost. What did wealth even mean when the most precious things in life, love, trust, companionship, had been taken away from her so easily? The deeper she thought about the inheritance, the more conflicted she became. It wasn't just the financial windfall that bothered her. It was the fact that Lucas and his family had asked her to do something with the money, a cause, a charity. She had never been involved in charity. Her entire life had been about scraping by, making do with what she had. The thought of using this fortune for something she hadn't yet fully understood was overwhelming. She wanted to scream, to throw the papers away and go back to the life she had known, the life where she knew what to expect, the life where things were simpler, even if it was filled with pain. As if Maria's internal struggle wasn't enough, her past was coming back to haunt her. It wasn't long before Roberto reached out to her again, having heard about her inheritance from mutual acquaintances. His voice, dripping with false sweetness, was now calling her, wanting to talk things through. Maria felt the weight of his words like a punch to the stomach. How dare he? After everything he had put her through, now he wanted to come back, to reclaim what he thought was rightfully his. "I heard about the inheritance, Maria." Roberto's voice echoed through the phone. "Listen, I know we've had our differences, but I'm willing to try again. We could start fresh. Just the two of us, with all this new wealth. Think about it, Maria. A new life, together." She closed her eyes, gripping the phone so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "No, Roberto," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "You left me once. I won't let you manipulate me again." A bitter silence followed. Roberto tried to speak again, but Maria hung up the phone before he could continue. She felt her heart beating fast, the anger and the resentment building up within her. She didn't need him. She had never needed him. Not really. But why did his voice still have the power to make her doubt her choices? Maria's dilemma wasn't just about the money. It was about the choices that came with it. She had always been a good person, someone who believed in kindness, in helping others. But could she really use this unexpected fortune for good? Was she morally obligated to help others because of the money, or could she simply take it and live her life in peace, knowing she had earned it by taking care of Chico? She spent hours walking with Chico, trying to sort through her feelings. She didn't know what to do. Her heart was torn between the woman who had been abandoned by her husband and the woman who had been given a second chance, a second life that she didn't understand yet. Could she turn her back on the responsibility that came with the inheritance? Would it be selfish to keep the money, or was it right to use it to help others, even if she didn't feel ready? Lucas, who had been so sure of the path that Maria should take, was now feeling the tension between them grow. He respected Maria, admired her strength, but he didn't understand why she was hesitating. To him, this inheritance was not just money. It was a chance for her to rebuild her life, a chance to step into a new role, a role that she was meant to play. He called her the next day, his voice filled with concern. "Maria, I know this is a lot to take in, but you need to understand. This is your opportunity. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for, but think about what you can do with this money. Think about the lives you can change." Maria, sitting in the quiet of her home, the weight of the decision pulling at her, shook her head. "I don't want to change lives, Lucas. I want to live mine. I want to find peace again. I want to be left alone." Lucas, his patience thinning, tried to reason with her. "You're not just getting money, Maria. You're getting a chance to honor the legacy of someone important. You don't have to do it alone. Let me help." But Maria's heart was already closed off to him, her instincts telling her to retreat. She didn't need a man, especially not someone who had led her to this point with promises of wealth and charity. She needed to find herself first. Maria's internal struggle was reaching its peak. On one side, there was the pull of financial security, the chance to change her life forever. On the other, there was her deep-rooted fear of losing herself in a world of wealth and expectations. Her moral compass was spinning, unsure of which direction to follow. And then there was Roberto's unexpected reappearance. His manipulation had shaken her, but it also brought clarity. Maria knew she needed to move forward, but where would she go from here? The journey ahead wasn't just about choosing between money or charity. It was about rediscovering herself, about finding peace in a world that had thrown her from one hardship to the next. As the days passed, Maria found herself in a relentless battle between moving forward and being pulled back into the painful past. Roberto's reappearance had stirred up memories that she thought were long buried. His voice on the phone, the lies, the broken promises, they all came rushing back. He had never truly cared for her, had he? His sudden interest in her wealth, in the inheritance she had received, made his intentions crystal clear. He wasn't here because he loved her. He was here because he wanted what she had. One morning, as Maria sat on her porch, staring blankly into the distance, she realized something that filled her with both anger and clarity. Roberto was using her again, trying to manipulate her into letting him back into her life under false pretenses. He didn't care about her or Chico. He only saw dollar signs, and Maria's vulnerability was his golden ticket. She had been naive to think he would change. The years of betrayal, the infidelities, the hurt, they had all led her to this moment, a moment where she would have to make a choice, not only for herself but for the future she was now facing. It wasn't long before Roberto showed up at her doorstep. This time, his demeanor was different, calm, almost pleading. He stood there in the rain, drenched but unwavering, as though the storm outside mirrored the storm within him. "Maria," he began, his voice low and smooth, "I'm not here for the money. I'm here because I realized something important. I made a mistake. I want to try again. I want us to have a future together. With the inheritance, we could start over. We could live the life we always dreamed of, just the two of us." Maria's heart raced with a mixture of disgust and sorrow. She could feel the weight of the lies in his words, the way they hung in the air like smoke. "No, Roberto," she said firmly, her voice steady but laced with years of hurt. "You've had your chance and you left. You walked away when I needed you the most, and now you think you can come back because of money." Her eyes burned with emotion. "You've made it clear who you are, and I won't let you use me again." Roberto's face faltered, the mask of charm slipping for a moment. "Maria, don't be like this. We could have everything. Don't you want that?" Maria took a step back, her hand tightening around the doorframe. "What I want is peace. What I want is to live without the shadow of betrayal hanging over me. I don't need you, Roberto." "I never did." His expression twisted in frustration. but he knew deep down that he had lost her. Maria had made up her mind. He turned away, muttering something under his breath as he walked down the steps, disappearing into the rain. As Roberto disappeared into the distance, Maria felt a strange calmness wash over her. The decision she had just made, telling him to leave, rejecting his manipulations, was the hardest thing she had done in years, but it was the right thing. For the first time in a long time, she felt in control of her life. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was standing up for herself. Chico, as if sensing the change, jumped up to sit beside her. Maria looked down at him, her heart swelling with a love so pure and untainted. She had always known that he was her true companion, the one who had stayed by her side when everything else had fallen apart. Now it wasn't the inheritance, it wasn't the wealth, it was this bond, this quiet, unspoken understanding that made her feel whole again. For the first time, Maria didn't feel like she was just existing. She was living, really living beyond the pain and the past. As the days passed, Maria continued to struggle with what to do about the inheritance. The idea of using the money for a greater good, as Lucas had suggested, lingered in her mind. But how could she, a woman who had lived so simply, know what was best? She wasn't a philanthropist, she was a survivor. The weight of that decision, whether to use the wealth for charity, to rebuild her life, or to find another path, was almost too much for her to bear. But something inside her told her that this inheritance was not just about the money. It was about the opportunity to do something meaningful, to heal, not only her own wounds but to help others along the way. In a quiet moment of reflection, Maria sat by the window, Chico curled up beside her. She looked out at the world beyond the world that had once seemed so cold and indifferent, but now seemed full of possibilities. She reached for the envelope with the legal documents once again, her heart steady as she began to read through them one last time. This wasn't just a gift from fate, it was a responsibility. The following day, Maria called Lucas. Her voice was steady, no longer filled with uncertainty. "I've made my decision," she said, her tone resolute. "I'm ready to use the inheritance, but not for my own comfort. I want to use it to help others, those who need it the way I did when I was alone. I'll use this gift to make a real difference." Lucas, on the other end of the phone, was silent for a moment, and then he spoke, his voice warm with admiration. "Maria, I knew you were capable of this. You've made a beautiful choice." "I won't do it alone," Maria added. "I need guidance, I need help, but I won't let this money sit idly by. I'll make sure it's used for something that matters." Maria had finally found her strength. She had confronted the past, faced the painful truths about her marriage, and rejected the manipulations that had once defined her life. Now, she was ready to step into a new future, one where she could use her inheritance not for luxury, but for creating lasting change. With Chico by her side, Maria had begun to build a new life. But as the days ahead promised, there were still many challenges to face, many obstacles to overcome. Would she be able to fulfill her promise to herself and to those in need? Only time would tell. Maria had made her decision. The inheritance would not be used for her personal gain, but instead to help those who needed it most. But as she began to plan how she would use the money to make a difference, she could never have imagined what would come next. It was one morning, a few weeks after she had reached out to Lucas, when everything changed. She had just returned from a meeting with a local charity she hoped to support, and as she stepped into her home, Chico was acting differently. The dog, normally calm and laid back, was pacing around the living room, whining in a way Maria had never heard before. "What is it, Chico?" Maria asked, bending down to his level and stroking his fur. She was worried. Something wasn't right. But Chico, normally a small and gentle dog, seemed agitated. He darted to the door and then back to Maria, his eyes wide, almost pleading. Before Maria could fully comprehend what was happening, there was a knock at her door. It was Lucas. He had arrived sooner than expected, his face serious as he stepped into the house without a word. "Maria, I need to tell you something important," he said, his tone grave. Maria raised an eyebrow, the unease from Chico's strange behavior still lingering. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice cautious. "Chico, he's not just a dog," Lucas began. "There's something you need to know about his past, something you might not have expected." Maria stared at him, confused. "What do you mean? What is there to know? I've been taking care of him for months. What's changed?" Lucas took a deep breath. The dog you've come to love. He's part of something bigger than you could imagine. He's not just a pet, Maria. He's tied to my family's legacy in ways you didn't know. Maria sat down slowly, her heart beginning to race. She had assumed the inheritance was the most unexpected part of her life. But now, Lucas was saying there was more. Much more. Lucas, what do you mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What else is there? Lucas paused before speaking, clearly weighing his words. Years ago, my mother had this dog. He was more than just a companion. He was a symbol, a key to an enormous trust fund that was meant to be passed on. The fortune that was left for Chico was never fully realized because of a family dispute. But the will, it was always clear. Whoever took care of Chico would inherit the wealth my family had left behind. The fortune that comes with him isn't just for me or my father. It's meant to be shared. Maria's head spun. She had assumed the inheritance was just about money, but now it seemed like a far more complex puzzle. The dog Chico had been the catalyst for something bigger than either of them had anticipated. His presence in her life had been fate, but it had also been a bridge to something much larger than the life she had known. But what about me, Lucas? Maria asked, her voice shaky with confusion. How do I fit into this? I was just trying to help a dog in need. I didn't ask for any of this. Lucas stepped closer, his eyes filled with sincerity. You didn't ask for it, but you were meant to receive it. My mother always believed that Chico's legacy would find the right person, and that person is you. As Maria absorbed the gravity of Lucas's words, something inside her began to click. This wasn't just about wealth or charity, it was about reconnecting with something lost, something that had been hidden for years. Her connection to Chico went beyond mere happenstance. It was part of a larger story that she hadn't even begun to understand. But there was more. Lucas had a photo to show her, a picture of Chico as a puppy, with her mother, the one who had loved him before he disappeared from the family. Maria stared at the photo, and for a moment, everything seemed to blur around her. There, in the picture, was a younger version of her mother, one she hadn't seen before. In the background, Chico as a tiny pup, his eyes just as innocent as they were now, looked up at her mother with unmistakable affection. My mother always kept that photo, Lucas continued. She spoke about Chico often. She believed he was more than just a pet. She said he would one day change the lives of the right people. And now, I believe she was right. Maria's heart pounded as the pieces started to fall into place. This wasn't just about a dog. It was about a legacy of love, of kindness, and of destiny. Chico was the key to unlocking not only her own future, but a larger purpose that she had never imagined. Maria, Lucas said softly, breaking her reverie. Now that you know the full story, the question is, what will you do with all this? Maria looked at the photo again, her heart torn. The past had come rushing back, and it seemed to have brought with it not just the promise of wealth, but the weight of expectation. She had the power to change her life, but with that power came the responsibility of making a choice that would affect not just her future, but the lives of others as well. Chico, as if sensing the decision, nuzzled his head against her leg. His presence, as always, grounded her in the moment. She could feel the love that had grown between them, the bond that was stronger than any material possession. She didn't want the wealth to define her life, but she realized that it could be the means to an end, to make the world a little kinder, a little better. I know what I need to do, Maria said quietly, standing up, her decision made. I'll use the inheritance, not for myself, but for others. I'll help those who've been abandoned, those who've suffered. I will honor this legacy, just as your mother would have wanted. Lucas smiled, his relief palpable. I knew you'd choose the right path, and I'll help you every step of the way. With her decision made, Maria's journey had reached a new chapter. The mystery of Chico's past had unraveled, revealing not only a connection to a family legacy, but a responsibility that Maria had never anticipated. As she stood there looking down at Chico, the weight of the decision felt heavy, but the path ahead was clearer than ever before. Maria had been given the chance to rewrite her story, and she was determined to use it wisely. As Maria settled into her new role, something deep within her began to shift. The decision to use her inheritance to help others was not just about charity, it was about healing, both for herself and for those who had been lost, abandoned, and forgotten. Her once lonely existence now had purpose, and the more she immersed herself in this new mission, the more she realized that this wasn't just about money. It was about love. It was about finding a deeper connection to the world and to herself. Each day, Maria woke up with a new sense of direction. Her home, once filled with echoes of sorrow and regret, had transformed into a space of warmth and purpose. The money she had received wasn't just a means to an end. It was a tool, a way to create something meaningful in a world that had, at times, been cold and indifferent. The legacy left to her wasn't just tied to wealth. It was tied to love, compassion, and the healing power of generosity. She thought about the past, about her broken marriage with Roberto, about the betrayal, the loneliness, but with each passing day, those memories became less painful. Maria had found something far more valuable than money. She had found her strength. She had rediscovered her own worth. And through all of it, Chico was by her side. The little dog she had rescued from the storm had, in turn, rescued her from a life of despair. He had been her anchor, the symbol of the love that still existed in the world, even when all seemed lost. Maria had established a foundation, one dedicated to helping elderly individuals who had been abandoned, just as she once had been. She poured her heart into the project, using the inheritance to provide shelter, care, and emotional support to those in need. The foundation was small at first, but Maria's determination, combined with the wealth she now had access to, began to make a real impact. The transformation was not just visible in her life, it was evident in the lives of the people she helped. Those who had no family, no one to turn to, now had a place to call home. And Maria, the woman who had once been so lost in her own pain, found herself surrounded by a new kind of family, the people she had helped save, just as Chico had saved her. Her days were filled with meetings, decisions, and new beginnings. But no matter how busy she became, she always made time for Chico. He was the constant in her life, the one thing that never wavered. And with him, she began to see the world in a new light, not as a place filled with betrayal, but as a place full of potential, full of kindness, and full of love. One afternoon, as Maria sat in her office, reviewing documents and planning the next phase of her foundation, Lucas came to visit. He had been a constant support, guiding her through the intricacies of her newfound responsibilities. But today, he saw something different in her. Maria looked up as he entered, her face lit with a smile that had been absent months ago. There was a glow about her, something that spoke to the inner peace she had found. "I can't believe how much has changed," Maria said, her voice soft with contentment. "It feels like a lifetime ago that I was sitting in that old house, wondering how I would go on." Lucas sat down across from her, his expression proud. "You've come a long way, Maria. I'm so proud of everything you've accomplished. You didn't just take the money and run, you've created something lasting. You've made a real difference." Maria smiled, but her eyes held a deeper, more profound understanding. "I didn't just create something, Lucas. I rebuilt myself. This foundation, it's not just for others. It's for me, too. It's a way to make peace with the past, a way to heal." Maria had not only transformed her life, but she had transformed her outlook on everything. The wealth she had once seen as a burden was now a gift, a tool to create something of real value. The painful memories of betrayal and abandonment had faded into the background, replaced by the joy of knowing she had done something good in the world. As the foundation grew, so did Maria. She became a voice for those who had been silenced by time and circumstance. She spoke at events, shared her story, and encouraged others to find their own way to heal. But despite all the success, her focus never wavered. It was always on helping others, on using the wealth to do good. One evening, as Maria sat on the porch, looking out at the sunset, Chico by her side, she reflected on the journey she had taken. The storm that had once seemed like the end had been the beginning of something beautiful. "I never thought I could find happiness again," Maria whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "But here I am, surrounded by people who care, and I have you, Chico. You saved me." Chico rested his head on her lap, his eyes content, as though understanding the depth of her words. In the quiet of the evening, Maria realized that true wealth wasn't measured in money. It was measured in the love and connections she had built, the lives she had touched, and the peace she had found within herself. Maria's transformation was complete. She had come from a place of heartbreak and despair to a place of purpose, healing, and love. The inheritance had been the catalyst, but it was the choices she had made, the compassion she had shown, and the relationships she had built that truly defined her journey. As she sat there, with Chico by her side, Maria knew that this new chapter in her life was only the beginning. The future was still uncertain, but she was no longer afraid. She had found her true path, and with it, the courage to face whatever came next. Months passed, and Maria's life continued to evolve in ways she never thought possible. The foundation had become a thriving entity, providing a safe haven for those who had nowhere else to turn. Maria, now a well-respected figure in the community, used her voice not only to advocate for the elderly, but also to inspire others to act with kindness and generosity. She had learned so much throughout this journey. The inheritance had not only changed her financial status, it had completely transformed the way she saw the world. She no longer saw it as a place of pain and betrayal, but a place of opportunity, where love and compassion could make a lasting difference. It had taken time, but Maria had learned that the greatest wealth one could ever possess was the ability to change lives, and in doing so, to change their own. One evening, Maria stood in the small garden outside her home, looking out over the city as the sun began to set. Chico, now a healthy and happy dog, trotted beside her. The air was cool, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers. It was a peaceful moment, one that Maria had fought hard to earn. Looking down at Chico, she reflected on how far she had come. The pain from her marriage, the loss of her trust in people, had all felt insurmountable at one point. But now, standing in the quiet calm of the present, Maria realized that those dark days had shaped her into the woman she was today. She had been through heartache, betrayal, and loss, but she had also found healing, forgiveness, and purpose. She thought back to the moment when Roberto had appeared on her doorstep, trying to manipulate his way back into her life. At the time, she had thought it was the end of everything, but now, with the clarity of hindsight, she understood that his reappearance had been a gift in disguise. It had been the final push she needed to sever ties with her past, to free herself from the shadows of what she thought she needed, and to embrace the new life waiting for her. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, snapping her out of her reverie. It was a message from Lucas. "How's everything going? I know you're doing incredible things." Maria smiled as she typed her response. "Everything is better than I ever imagined. I've found peace. I've found purpose. And I've found that the real wealth is in the love we give and the lives we touch." As Maria looked at the message on her phone, she thought about everything that had led her here. The dog she had rescued in the storm, the inheritance, the heartbreak, and the ultimate choice she had made to use her wealth for good. It was a journey filled with obstacles, but also filled with lessons. Her eyes settled on the horizon, where the sun was dipping below the skyline. In that moment, Maria realized that the true measure of success was not in how much you gained, but in how much you gave. The money had been the tool, but the love and the impact she had created with it were the true legacy she would leave behind. She was no longer the woman who had been abandoned by her husband. She was no longer the woman who had lived in the shadows of her past. Maria was the woman who had found the courage to change her life, to make a difference, and to embrace the beauty of the world around her. And through it all, Chico, the small dog who had once been lost in a storm, had been her guiding light. Maria bent down, petting Chico softly, her heart full. "We did it, didn't we, little one?" she whispered. Chico looked up at her, his eyes filled with the same unconditional love he had given her from the very beginning. In that moment, Maria knew that she wasn't alone. Not now, not ever. As the story of Maria's transformation came to a close, there was one final lesson that echoed in her mind. The real wealth is not found in money or material things, but in the connections we make, the love we give, and the lives we touch along the way. Maria had found her second chance, and in doing so, she had changed the lives of many others. She had learned that no matter the hardships we face, no matter the setbacks, we always have the power to rewrite our own story, and in the end, it's the love we give that defines us, not the possessions we accumulate. As Maria looked forward to the future, she understood that the journey was far from over. There would always be challenges, but she was no longer afraid of them. She had the love of her dog, the support of her community, and the strength within herself to face whatever came next. With that, she stepped into the unknown, ready for whatever new adventures life would bring. Maria's journey had come full circle, from heartbreak to healing, from solitude to purpose. She had found herself not in wealth, but in the love she had given and received. And with that, she understood that the true riches in life were the moments of connection, compassion, and kindness. Her story was one of transformation, a story that would inspire others to believe in second chances, to understand that we are never truly lost, and that the greatest gift we can give is the gift of love.